Hi everybody, welcome to today's webinar. My name is McKay Allen. I'm the Director of Content and Communications at Log My Calls. We're excited you're here today, and we're really excited to have Frederick Vallee, the co-founder of Optimizer, on the phone with us today, who's going to present this really neat topic, AdWords Automation, how to put PPC on AutoPilot. His resume speaks for itself. I'll introduce him more fully in a moment, but first, let's set the scene a little bit, explain who we are, why we do these webinars, and then talk about the sort of plan today as we turn it over to Frederick and get into the content itself. So you can see on your screen there, we are Log My Calls. We're a call tracking and call automation tool. So basically what we do is we do four things. Number one, we provide basic call tracking information. So we can tell marketers which ads, campaigns, and keywords generate phone calls for them. So we can say, okay, your AdWords campaigns are generating this number of phone calls, organic search is generating this number of phone calls, etc. Second thing we do is we record calls. The third thing we do is we actually analyze, and no one else does this, we analyze the calls themselves using speech recognition technology and then extract data from the calls. So we can tell you whether or not the caller was a good lead or a bad lead, whether or not the call resulted in a sale or a reservation or an appointment or whatever your method of conversion is on the phone. We can even tell you if the person who answered the phone did a good job or not. So we do all this based on analyzing the call itself. Based on the words and phrases said on the call. And then the fourth thing we're able to do is actually automate actions based on those activities. So if a call results in a sale, we can actually send via webhook data to a CRM that will change the customer record within the CRM, or to a point of sale system. Or we can affix a lead score or a call recording to a CRM record itself, or to a marketing automation tool, or to a bid management platform. So long story short, it's a tool that can automate actions within other SaaS services, SaaS platforms, if you will. So it's a useful tool used by digital marketers across North America. So that's what we do. Now, the second question is, why do you host all these webinars? We host a lot of webinars. We do one or two a week. We've had really great experts. You can see two of them here. Today, of course, we have Fred. Next week, we have David Rodnitsky with 3Q Digital, which is a big agency in California. We had last week Tim Ash, the CEO of Site Tuners and the founder of Conversion Conference. We've had Michael Fleischner. We've had experts from companies like Ballyhoo and Inside Sales and Yext. So long story short, we host a lot of webinars. The reason we do that is obviously we build thought leadership. We provide useful content. We hope people remember us and like us. But the second reason is to really provide you with useful information from some of the biggest names and thought leaders in the industry. So if you're a marketer that's trying to do better at your job, we hope you'll attend our webinars. So you can go to logmycalls.com/webinar, and you can register for upcoming webinars and see past webinars as well. So you can see here last week we had a webinar with Joe Hupp, who's the Vice President of Marketing at Marketecture, which is a large agency based in Salt Lake City, Utah. So long story short, a lot of webinars here, a lot of content, a lot of stuff for you to digest. And it's all free, which is awesome. Who doesn't like free stuff? So let's talk about today's webinar. Today, I'll introduce Fred more in a moment, but we encourage you to ask questions. You can see in the little question area, and I see already some questions coming in. We see in the little question area, just type your questions in there, and I'll read those to Fred when he has a pause in his presentation and at the conclusion of his presentation. So type your questions in there. The second thing to note is the webinar is going to be recorded. So don't worry about taking notes or just make sure you're digesting what Fred's talking about and being thoughtful about the questions you want to ask, because this is a really unique opportunity to have one of the really preeminent AdWords experts in the entire world at your disposal for an hour here. So please take advantage of that and ask him questions. Type those in, as I said. And then the final thing we want to do today is we just want to get a sense as to where you're calling in from. So please type in the question area. This will help you get familiar with that area and learn to use it. But just type in which city or state or area of the world you're calling in from today. I'll start. I'm calling in today from St. George, Utah. Our headquarters are in Salt Lake City, but our satellite office where I'm based is in St. George. We're about an hour and a half north of Las Vegas, right on I-15. And Fred, where are you calling in from today, sir? You're in the Silicon Valley, right?
I am. I'm in Palo Alto right now.
Awesome. Silicon Valley, Palo Alto. So we've got a ton of people from a lot of places all over the world. Let's go through Atlanta. We got Buffalo, New York, Austin, Texas. We got a couple people from the UK. We've got Toronto, Florida, San Jose, Frederick, Maryland, Florida, Brazil, Raleigh, Durham, Iowa, San Diego, Montreal, New York, Chicago, Tempe. Tempe's nice this time of year, better than July in Tempe. We've got Bogota, Colombia, Chicago, Australia. Awesome. So we're all over the place. That's great. So with that, I want to introduce Fred, turn it over to him. Fred, as you probably know, he's one of the first 500 employees at Google. He spent about 10 years there building AdWords and then evangelizing AdWords. He still does some consulting work for Google. He's the co-founder of Optimizer, and he's spoken all over the world at conferences, at industry events about AdWords. He really is, I think in the email we teased it as a Google insider, and that's actually very true. And so we're thrilled, as always, to have Fred join us for these webinars. He's done this, I think, 2 or 3 times with us, and we're always really, really grateful. So, Fred, thanks for taking the time, sir. We're excited to have you, and I'll give you control of the screen here. So thanks again, Fred.
Thank you, McKay, for having me again. So let me go into screen share. All right, and thank you everyone from all over the world for joining today. So like McKay was saying, my name is Frederic Valles, and today I'm going to take about half an hour of your time to talk about AdWords, and hopefully you'll get that half an hour back many times over because we're going to talk about automation. So hopefully some of the things you learned today, you're actually going to be able to apply to your own accounts and start saving lots and lots of time. And the reason that I wanted to talk about automation is a little bit of my history, right? So I was at Google for 10 years, and I was involved in building a lot of the AdWords products. So I was one of the people who built the AdWords editor. I was on the team that acquired Urchin, which now is Google Analytics. And so when you're inside of Google, you believe you're building all of these amazing tools, and I truly believe they were amazing, but you're not actually using a lot of these tools. And so when I left Google in 2012, a lot of people came to me and they said, hey, can you help me manage a couple of AdWords accounts, or can you take a look at what I'm doing? So that wasn't the path that I necessarily wanted to take when I had left Google, but I was helping some friends and some folks, and quickly started finding that managing AdWords was so manual, and some of the things that I just assumed would be so easy to do actually were not that easy. And so as I was setting up an agency and a consultancy, I ended up spending more of my time on the phone with new customers, and then I find myself at the end of the day not really having had a lot of time to manage accounts. I was like, I know exactly what needs to be done in these accounts. I know what it takes to have a good AdWords account. I just don't have the time for it because it's so repetitive and manual. So let me build some tools that help automate this. And these are the tools that we're going to talk about today. So a lot of AdWords scripts, but then all of these tools that I was building, I met up with my co-founders at Optimizer. We figured out we had sort of the same goals as far as what we wanted to do and make AdWords easier for account managers and for agencies. And so we put our heads together. We came up with a company called Optimizer, and that's where we build a lot of automations and time savers. Now, obviously, I mean, I would love for all of you to use Optimizer, take a look at Optimizer, but really the presentation today is not going to be about that. It's going to be about some of the free things inside of AdWords that you can all use today to really make your lives easier. But so if anyone wants to take a look, Optimizer, that's our tool company with all the automations. And we also work for SalesX, and SalesX is a full-service AdWords agency, also out of the Silicon Valley here, the Bay Area. And then, of course, if you want to tweet, my handle is Silicon Valleys, and a good hashtag today would be Optimizer. So for the next half hour, first want to set the expectations. Why do we even want to talk about automation? And then we're going to go into 3 different types of automations. So from managing bids to using automated rules to doing some super sophisticated high-end stuff using AdWords scripts. Okay, the first things first, why even automate an account? Well, if you are actually managing AdWords accounts, you know that there's a lot going on. People, your customers call you, you get pinged, you get distracted throughout the day, and that's just human nature. People do get distracted. So if you're in the middle of a task, you get distracted, maybe you don't finish that task, maybe you know you should be doing some sort of a task weekly on an account to keep it in good shape. Maybe you know you should be looking for new keywords or negative keywords on a weekly basis, but you just have too much other stuff going on. And then there's other stuff like setting bids, and we can all do math, we all have calculators, but honestly computers are just much better at math than humans. They're much faster at it. So some things that you might be able to do, it's just much more efficient to hand off control to the computers and let them take care of stuff. And then at the end of the day, I think all of us, we got into marketing because we enjoy coming up with creative messages. We enjoy working on the challenges of accounts. We enjoy working on strategy for accounts. But a lot of the marketing that we have to do is just that tedious, laborious stuff, and we don't want to do that. We want to work on fun projects. And so then you end up having these people who come into your office one day, and they're wearing T-shirts like these. Now, these are actual T-shirts that are given out by one of the other tool companies that makes AdWords more efficient. It's a company called Acquisio. And these are the T-shirts that they give out at conferences. And I think it really reflects the sentiment that maybe many of you on the call have is, you kind of wish you were doing other stuff, so that's why you want to automate. Now, the counter arguments why you should not automate something is that whenever you go to a tool company, they tend to have solutions that maybe are a little bit cookie cutter. And that makes sense. I mean, a tool company, even mine like Optimizer, the way that we make money is by having a solution that works for lots and lots of people. And while we can put lots of controls in it and do lots of ways for you to be able to customize how the automation works, at the end of the day, it's never going to be exactly the way that you need it to be for your business, because every business at the end of the day is very unique and has a very different set of needs. So that's a reason why you still want to do a lot of this stuff in your account on a more manual basis, or if you create some automation, you want to make it very custom to what it is that you do. But at the end of the day, in life, it's all about balancing a few different things. And so in my opinion, it's about smart automation should leverage your team's knowledge. So it's not really about putting the whole account on AutoPilot, but it's letting the AutoPilot take care of some aspects of it. And so I was reading Wired magazine about a year ago, and they had this awesome quote which said that if you add human judgments to a statistical method, the results were getting about 15% more accurate. And the specific context of what they were doing here is they were talking about weather forecasting. And so most of weather forecasting today is done using very sophisticated computer models, and it's really automated. But if you just let the computer make that final judgment, it's often not as good as if you had a human review it and maybe add a little bit of the intuition that we have, some of what we know from our history of working in a certain field, and add that on top of the automation. So really what I'm advocating for is that you take automation, but you put it in the context of what your team is already working on. So let's talk about 3 specific types of automation. And we're going to start first here with bid automation. And now bid automation, that's obviously the part where a lot of math is involved. The problem with bids is that there's so many levels at which bids really should be set in an account that it almost becomes impossible for a human to do it. So even if you're awesome at calculating the right bid, you're probably not that good at keeping track of how often you've changed a keyword's bid and what the impact was of making all these changes. And Google's actually really good at that. Google's a really good big data company. And lucky for all of us, Google has a bunch of automated bid strategies. Excuse me. And all of these automated bid strategies, they help Google set the right bids based on the goals that you have for an account. And so what I put on this slide here, excuse me, is what Google's bid strategy is and what the corresponding goal would be for you as an advertiser, and then at which level you can run this bid automation. So in the old days, or even like 1 or 2 years ago, there weren't that many ways that you could manage bids with Google. You had stuff like, Google could maximize clicks, and that's basically getting you the most clicks possible for a given budget. And by the way, that's not the smartest bid strategy. Right? Often you should really be thinking about cost per acquisition and return on ad spend and spending more money on the keywords that give you conversions and high value conversions. But if you're not tracking conversions and you're just looking for the most exposure that you can, then maybe maximizing clicks is a good strategy. Now other companies are very brand sensitive, and they might say for some of our branded keywords, we absolutely want to be at the top of the search page. We don't want to be on the right-hand side. We don't want to be on the second page of the results because very few people go to that page. So in that case, you have something like target search page location, where Google will automatically manage your bids to be either at the top of the page or be on the first page of the search results. Now, the more sophisticated bid strategies and the ones that I really like are target cost per acquisition and target ROAS. These take into account conversion rates and historical conversion rates, and they help you achieve your target cost per acquisition, or they help you increase your return on ad spend. And obviously that's what you want to do as a business, because that's where your profit is going to come in. Now these methodologies do require that you have conversion tracking set up, but they're awesome because really even if you're looking at other companies to do bid management for you, you have to keep in mind there's only one company in the world that can make bid changes in real time on Google, and that's Google itself. And here's a quick explanation of that. So if I do a search on Google right now, Google knows something about me. It knows that I'm based in Palo Alto. It knows something about my search history. It knows something about my preferences. It knows what time of day it is. It knows all of these factors about this specific search that one user is doing, and based on that, based on these signals, they can bid higher or lower in real time based on the expectation of my search leading to a conversion. Even if you use a third-party bid management system, you're probably only updating the bids a couple of times per day, maybe once an hour at most. And the reality is, within that 1 hour, you could have 1,000 people searching for your products, and they're all going to get the same bid. And so that's not quite as effective as letting Google make real-time bid changes, which is what they can do with target CPA and target return on ad spend. You also have enhanced CPC. That's something where you still set the maximum CPC, but Google will automatically move that up or down based on how likely they think it is that click will convert. And then they've announced some things in April. I still haven't seen these, but it's to maximize revenue and maximize conversions. So there's still development in this space, which is really exciting and I think is going to be quite useful to us. Now, the way that you set up these bid strategies is very simple. You go into the interface, and these are part of the shared library. So you can see there on the left under bid strategies, that's where you create new bid strategies. The beautiful thing too is that you can mix and match those. So you could say, for my branded keywords, I'm going to use one bid strategy, and then for different keywords, I might use a different bid strategy. And then once you're looking in the account, looking at a certain set of keywords or ad groups, you can go to that little box right there that says bid strategy and actually pick what bid strategy you want to apply at that specific level of the account. Now, let's put this into practice, right? Because I've talked about the options that you have, but let's take a look at an example of how you might actually make this work for your account. So, because you can have multiple bid strategies, the question really becomes, what bid strategy should I apply to which items in my account? And what you can do is you can set up filters. So you can say filter all of my high converting keywords. So this is the one all the way on the left. So you might say any keyword that in the last 30 days has had at least 5 conversions. These are my high converters. I want to do something different for those than I want to do for known converting keywords. So these are ones that have had some conversions, but not necessarily a ton of conversions. So maybe between 1 and 5 conversions in the last 30 days. And then I have a final bucket, and this is the unknown keywords. So these have had no conversions, but they've had no conversions because they've had so few impressions. So they've had less than 10 impressions. So these could be 3 filters that I build out. And then the next thing that I can do is I can apply bid strategies to each of these buckets of filters and the keywords that fall within those. So for high converters, I might want to do a top-of-page bid strategy, right? Because these are known to be really good converting keywords. I want to make sure they get the best exposure they can and be at the top of the page. Whereas something that's a known converter, well, I should make sure that stays on the first page of results. And so maybe I take a first-page bid strategy and I add 50% to that. The beautiful thing here now is that Google, in real time, will make those changes, and so you don't have to stay on top of it the whole time. Maybe on a weekly basis you go in and you change what keywords have which bid strategies, but during that week, Google's constantly taking care of making sure you're at the right bid. And then for the unknown keywords, maybe they have very few impressions because they're not on the first page of search results. So for those, you could set something like a first page bid rule. So the point here is you can mix and match all of these strategies, and you can apply them in the right context of the account. So that's a great way to take advantage of free bid management. You know, a lot of companies that do bid management, they charge you 1% or more of your AdWords spend, and that can be quite significant. So with these tools, you can do a lot of the same things, but do them completely for free. Now, another quote from that same article in Wired magazine that I thought was really interesting is that as long as the humans understand what it is that they are controlling and automating, we're going to be fine. But if you become slaves to the technology, that's when the trouble is going to break out. And I have a really good example of this. So we had one company that we were looking at, and they had really dropped the conversions. And it turns out that what happened was at one point during the year, they had changed the landing page. and the landing page was really, really bad, so it didn't work at all. All of a sudden, the conversion started dropping. And they had a bid management system, and that bid management system correctly identified conversion rate was declining, and as a result they were dropping the bid, but even doing this for the best performing keywords historically. So the company figures out the landing page is broken, they fix it after a couple of days, and so now everything's going smoothly again for the organic traffic, but they notice the search, the paid traffic is not coming back, and that's because the bid management system had never considered that maybe some of these keywords that had been bid down as a result of the landing page were now on the second page of search results. So they were basically getting no more traffic anymore. And it took them 6 months to figure this out, and this was 6 months of a lot of conversions and a lot of sales they could have had if they had actually monitored what the bid management system was doing for them, and if they had made a fix to the bid system at the same time that they made a fix to the landing pages. So, you know, always be very cautious when you're using automation because stuff like that does happen. Now, I'm an engineer, and what that means is that I often like to make very complicated solutions to easy problems. And one day I find myself writing this really complicated tool, and after I spent like multiple days building it, I realized I could have used an automated rule, which Google has already built, to do exactly the same thing. So automated rules, these are another great way to do automation. And by the way, I realize I should probably pause here really quickly and see if McKay had any questions. All right, I'm just going to power through them here.
I had muted myself, so I was speaking.
Okay.
I had muted myself. We do have a couple questions for you, if you can take those real quick, Fred.
Sure. Let's do it.
Fred, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Sorry about that. I had muted myself, and then I.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. Do you have a second to take a couple quick questions on what
Sure.
you've discussed so far?
Yeah, let's do it.
So there seems to be, and you kind of clarified this, but if someone's using an automated bidding platform, does this replace that? Is it an add-on to a tool like maybe a Quizio or something like that? How does this fit into that sort of a model if someone uses a tool like that previously? That's a question I've gotten a couple times.
Yeah, this really replaces it for the most part. It's always, you can't really have two automated bid systems running at the same time because they're going to compete with each other and they're going to undo each other's changes. Or even worse, they could stack changes on top of one another. So you could have one bid tool that says, oh, this keyword performed really well. Let me increase the bid by 20%. And then another bid management tool comes in and says the same thing, but now the bid is already 20% higher, and they bid another 20% on top of that. So, you know, you could imagine a situation where by the end of the day you're bidding $1,000 maximum CPC for all of your keywords because all of these have just been running on top of each other and they don't know what the other system already changed. So yeah, I would use this pretty exclusively.
Great. And then the other question people are asking here, I'll just read this. How much budget or how many conversions should somebody have in the last 30 days in order to justify using a tool like this? I mean, what's your minimums or your guidelines there?
Well, so Google's minimum is 15 conversions in 30 days for a campaign to be able to be put on an automated bid management system, specifically the ones related to conversion data. But I think the moment that you can do bid, everybody should be doing bid management of some sort, right? I mean, you all know what goals you have for keywords, whether it's having a really high position on the page because you care about branding or you care about your cost per acquisition targets. So even if some of these automated methodologies are not quite ready, you should be managing your bids on a relatively frequent basis because the worst thing that you can imagine is that you spend too much money on a keyword that never gives you any sales, right? That's money down the toilet. And maybe you have another keyword that's working great, but you're budget constrained because this other keyword that's never converting is sucking up the budget that you have, right? So spend less of your budget on the stuff that doesn't work and more on the stuff that does work. And bid management helps you with that because it helps you eliminate a lot of these impressions that might not really pay off for you in the long run.
That's great. That's good. We've got a couple other questions, but I think we can save those till the end.
Sounds good.
Sorry for my confusion there. I had muted me, and then I had, anyway, long story.
No worries.
So,
too many buttons sometimes.
I know, no kidding. Go ahead.
So let's take a look at automated rules. So if you have something that you want to do and that you do relatively repetitively in the account, you can actually tell Google to automate this for you. So an example is If you have a keyword where you really care that it's in a high position and you want to be notified if it drops below that certain position, you can put up an automated rule. And this one sends an email when something happens to either keywords or ad texts or ad groups or whatever context you have. And then you can say, okay, what is the trigger for that rule? So in this case, I've put it to be if my average position is worse than 1, and I'm going to check this on a daily basis at 2 o'clock, and I'm going to use data from yesterday. So if that condition is met, then send me an email with a notification about this. Right, so that's a very simple thing that you can do, but rather than you having to manually go into the account now, you can actually have Google send you an email when these conditions are met. And this is the specific example where I spent a lot of time doing a really complicated automation, and then I realized Google could do it for me. But imagine that you have a different set of ads you like to run on the weekends than on weekdays. Well, you can actually turn on automatically different ads on weekdays and weekends. So you just select which ads you want to do this for, and then you make a rule that says every week on a Friday at 5 o'clock, just turn on any of my weekend ads. And then Sunday evening at maybe 10 o'clock, turn off my weekend ads and turn on my weekday ads. So rather than you having to remember on Monday morning or Friday afternoon to take care of these manual actions, you can just program Google to always do it on the same schedule. And so that's a big time saver, and it gives you the ability then to actually run different creatives. I mean, imagine for your business if you could actually say that you have a plumbing business, right, and you're looking to get calls from customers. Well, if your ad text actually says, we can get you a plumber on Thursday, and today happens to be Thursday, well, that's really powerful, right? That's really powerful to the user who's looking at a bunch of ads, and yours is the only one that actually includes today's day. They're probably going to click on that. They're probably going to give you a call before the others. And this actually becomes really easy using an automated rule like this one. And these are also really easy to set up. So all you have to do is go into the account, and the thing that you want to automate, whether it's a keyword or an ad text or an ad group, you go to that page in the AdWords interface and you click on the button to automate, and it tells you the rules that are already available. And then you can set up one of these rules and you can put in some of your own parameters, and then Google will start running it. So that's really simple automations, and I'm going to keep going through here, and then we'll take questions at the end. But now I want to talk about the really sophisticated automations, and these are the ones that really get me excited because really the sky is kind of the limit when it comes to AdWords scripts. So we've talked about some of the simple stuff, but now if you want to take that simple stuff and really customize it to work exactly the way it needs to work for your business, that's what an AdWords script will enable you to do. And so what are these AdWords scripts? And it's actually funny. We talked to one of our Google reps yesterday, and he didn't even know what an AdWords script was, which is kind of a little sad. But it's the reality. A lot of people just haven't heard about these things. So AdWords scripts are simple pieces of JavaScript code that you can put into an AdWords account, and then they will automate stuff in that AdWords account on a schedule that you define. These things can run as often as once an hour. So keep in mind with the automated rules that I just showed you, they can only run once a day. So if you wanted to do something with bid management, for example, you might want to do that more often than once a day. So you cannot do it with an automated rule, but you could do it with an AdWords script and program it to run once an hour. Now, when I say script, I really do mean script. I really do mean code, right? And this is usually the portion of the presentation where we see the attendees drop by half because they're like, oh my God, this is code. I can't deal with this. It's too difficult. So let me just say I'm not expecting anyone to learn how to write code, or I'm not even expecting anyone to be a programmer. But I want to tell you what these pieces of code can do, and then I'm going to tell you where you can find pre-built pieces of code that you can just copy and paste into your account. So somebody else has already written the automation, and you can take advantage of it. So you can copy paste it into your account, run it exactly like they wrote it, or if you have a little bit of programming knowledge or you know someone who does, you can make small tweaks to that code, and that really allows you to get to a level of customization that's never been possible before we had AdWords scripts in AdWords. So to give you a little bit of context of what can an AdWords script touch, what can they do? Well, they can create any type of report that exists in AdWords, and they can also make changes in accounts. And again, this is where the power comes in. They can actually do optimizations in accounts on your behalf. And the entities that are supported is shopping product groups. This is relatively new, but anyone who's running a shopping campaign, you can automate that with a script. Ad extensions like site links, you can manage those automatically through a script. You can manipulate budgets. So you could imagine a script that automatically updates your daily budgets based on how much budget is left to the end of the month, right? Rather than you having to do that manually on a daily basis, now you can put that on an automated schedule and have the script handle it for you. You can do stuff with labels, keywords, bids, ads, ad groups, campaigns, targeting, and bid modifiers. So a lot of things you can do. Now, the things not on this list is anything to do with the Google Display Network. That is currently not yet supported, so that's a big limitation. But at the very least, you can use an AdWords script to really manage some of your search campaigns. So let me go into some of the stuff that these scripts can do. So the script can actually talk to your data. And this is really powerful because what it means is they can look at they can send Gmail for you. They can look inside your Google Drive. They can access Google Spreadsheets. Or they can even go through an API. And an API is simply an application programming interface, which a lot of people may not be really familiar with what that means, but as a simple example, say you have weather data, or you have a database of movie data, or you have your own company's data on a database, you can actually connect that directly into your AdWords accounts. And so that becomes really powerful because now you can do some really, really cool stuff. So let me show you a couple of examples of what you could do. So you could imagine that you have a spreadsheet on Google that contains all of the products that you sell, right? So here's an example. You're selling flowers. So what is the product name? It's roses. What color are they? What's the price? And how many do you have in stock? You can actually take that spreadsheet, modify an AdWords script, and you can define a template for how that data should be turned into ad groups, ad text, and keywords. And automatically, every single hour, Google can look at that spreadsheet and they can crank out new ad groups based on your current inventory that also reflects how many units you have in stock, what the prices are for those products. So all of your ads are going to be completely in sync with your underlying inventory. One of the favorite use cases for this one is car dealers. Whenever they have a new car that comes onto the lot, right? Someone does a trade-in, so it's a used car they now have available for sale. Rather than having someone at the office go into AdWords and manually create new ads for it, they simply add that new car to the spreadsheet and they walk away. And in less than an hour, that new car is going to have its own keywords, its own ad group, its own ad text that really describes, okay, it's a brown Toyota Corolla, it's a 2005, and it's $10,000, and it says all of that in the ad text. And all they had to do was put a line on a spreadsheet. So that's some of the powerful stuff that you can do where you're connecting your business data to your AdWords account, and the whole thing runs on autopilot. You only have to put something on the spreadsheet, and the rest is handled for you. Now, the other thing I see a lot of advertisers wanting to do is have reports downloaded to their computer. Right? Maybe you want to have your daily keyword report. Maybe you're going to go on a trip, so maybe you're going to be offline. Well, you can use an AdWords script that downloads that report and it puts it into your Google Drive. If you've installed the Google Drive plugin, it can actually sync whatever files are on Google Drive to your local computer. So the script automatically pulls the report, automatically puts it into Google Drive, automatically syncs it to your computer. So when you're sitting on the plane and you don't have a Wi-Fi connection, because you're flying on the wrong airline that doesn't have them yet. But at that point, the file actually exists on your computer, right? So that's an easy automation where you don't have to manually go in and download everything before you're going on a trip. It's doing it automatically. And so a couple of other really cool examples is, and this is kind of like the classic Google example. Not sure how relevant it is to many businesses, but it kind of gives the context of what you could do with this. But what if you had an ice cream shop? You could pause your ads when the temperature goes below 70 degrees. And the way you do that is you simply tie into an existing weather feed, right? So you look at somebody who's providing weather data for the cities that you advertise in, and if you see that temperature goes below 70 degrees, you can pause all of the ads. Or even cooler, you could say, well, at that point, pause all of my ads that say ice cream, but enable all of the ads that say you also sell cappuccinos, right? Maybe people want to drink a hot coffee when the temperature gets a little bit cooler. You could even pause ads when the landing page is not working. This is a classic example, right? Sometimes your website goes down, or maybe sometimes a product goes out of inventory on your site. So the person clicks on the ad, and then the landing page says, oh, sorry, this product is out of stock, right? Was that a great click to buy? Probably not so much. So now you could have a system that automatically scans all of your landing pages, and if it finds a specific piece of text like out of stock, out of inventory, it pauses that ad. And then you could have the flip side happen as well. So when that product comes back into stock, that same script could re-enable those ads automatically. So that's some of the stuff that you can really put onto AutoPilot with this. Now, the other question that account managers often have is reporting. They want to do some sophisticated reports. They want to slice and dice the data in different ways, and scripts make this really easy as well. So imagine that you wanted to know what is my performance by keyword match type in my account. Well, in AdWords, that's not the easiest question to answer, but here you have a script that automatically aggregates the stats for each match type. Now, you could do it by match type, but you could even say do it by the length of the keyword. So tell me the performance for 2-word keywords, or keywords that have 3 or 4 words in them. And you can get a sense of what is the best performing category of keywords. And because maybe your boss is saying, hey, listen, we should have more long-tail keywords. You should have 7- and 8-word keywords. Well, you run this kind of a report and you tell your boss, well, look, at 6 keywords, we're doing really well, but once we go to 7, there's almost no people searching for those. So maybe it's not worth the effort to put into it, because we can prove to you with this data that there's actually no volume at that level anymore. Or you could answer a different question. So you might say, I would like to make better decisions about which ad text is performing better. And most of you probably reuse the same line of ad text for description line 2 quite frequently. A lot of people just say free shipping, order it today, right? It's pretty generic text that tends to be in description line 2. Well, AdWords makes it really hard for you to get a view of what's the performance for every single ad text that uses that same description line 2, and how does that compare to other description lines too. So we have a script, and this script totals up every stat for the headline individually, description line 1 by itself and description line 2 by itself, and now you can see in this chart here what is the different performance based on what you put in description line 1 or description line 2. Right? And so now you can make better decisions because you've quickly answered something that would have taken you quite a bit of time to do manually through Excel. And then the other thing, of course, these scripts, they can send you emails. So I get myself a daily email that says, this is your account level quality score. By the way, calculating account level quality score, if you do it manually, it'll probably take you about half a day if you've never done it, because it takes quite a bit of time to figure it out. It's basically impression-weighted quality score averages. If you take a script like one that we've built or that some other people have built, you will do the same thing in 30 seconds flat. We will tell you your account level quality score, and we can email it to you on a daily basis. Right? So that's really a big time saver. The script can also put results into a Google spreadsheet. Right? So if you want to have a spreadsheet that's shared with some clients or someone else, it can automatically create those. And then, of course, once you have a spreadsheet, it's really easy to do some charting as well. So here we have a chart that shows the daily delivery pattern. So we can see how many conversions accrue for a certain account by noon or by 1600 hours, so 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And we can then have an expectation of what is the estimated delivery pace for an account. And if one day the client comes to us and says, you know, it's already noon and I barely spent any of my budget, we can look back at this and we can say, well, that's actually quite normal for your account because most of your activity happens in the afternoon, right? That would be a hard question to answer if you didn't have this or if you had to do it manually in AdWords. You can also take all of this data and push it into dashboards. So if you have something like Sife or Gecko board or Duck board or any of the dashboarding function SaaS products, you can generally push data from our scripts or other scripts directly into those. And how cool is this if you're an agency especially, right? Because you might want to show a dashboard to a client, but if that client can get the exact same dashboard by directly going to Sife, then what's the value add that you bring as an agency? Whereas if you have a script that actually pushes some unique data into the dashboard that you give to them, well then if that client leaves you as an agency, they're no longer going to have that data, or they're going to have to figure out how to recreate it. And so that's a compelling reason for, or that's a nice value add that you can provide as an agency. And so, you know, hopefully I've gotten you to think about some of the things that you could automate, some of the things that are possible. Now, as far as starting, the first step is going to be finding a script that already kind of does what you want it to do and that you can tweak. So here's a couple of sources for good places to go. So AdWords has written a bunch of scripts themselves. A friend of mine runs freeadwordscripts.com. Russ Savage, really good scripts on there. And like the name says, these are all free. And then we as Optimizer, we also write a bunch of scripts. Some of those are free. Most of them are paid, but we've also put in a really neat interface to make it much easier to use. So once you've copied your script, the next step is to go into your AdWords account, either the MCC level of the account or the individual account. And you simply go to your campaign, bulk operation, and scripts. You paste in the code, and then generally that's it. You only have to paste in the code, maybe make 1 or 2 tweaks like changing out an email address, and then you can preview the script. And this is important. You have to preview the script because scripts, like I said, they can make changes in your account. So if you just paste in somebody else's code and you just trust it to run and you run it, it could actually destroy your account. So generally take a backup of the account in AdWords Editor first, then go to the script, run it in preview mode, make sure that the changes it's going to make sense to you, and then when you're happy, that's when you can actually run the script. And then the next thing you can do is you can schedule it. So now you can say, run the same script every Monday at 7 p.m. or run this script, which is going to make sure that I'm bidding to an average position, run that every single hour. So you just pick whatever schedule you want, or you can also set it to be run manually whenever you want. Now, if all of this code scares you, we did notice that within Optimizer that a bunch of our users just didn't want to use scripts because they don't want to touch code. So we've actually made a really nice interface where all of the settings for a script are now dealt with in a nice web form. So if you can fill out a form on the internet, you can manage scripts. After you fill out the form, we generate the code for you, and then you can copy and paste that code into AdWords, and you never have to make a change to it. Even if you change the values in the form later on, the script will connect to our system. It will ask what are the latest settings the user wants to run, and then run it that way. We call those enhanced scripts. People are really liking these, and they make it so much easier to use a really cool automation on your account. So I've taken a little bit more time than I was expecting, so here's my final details. If anyone has any questions, feel free to email me. If anyone wants to sign up for Optimizer, I'll give you a discount. Just send me an email. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to McKay and see if people had any more questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. That was great. Great information as usual. Some of the stuff that you can do to really get the benefit and save time with AdWords is really incredible for people who have been doing it manually for years. So let's just go through as many of these questions as we can. I'll just start at the top and work my way down. Let's see. Okay, the very first question actually is probably directed to me. What's the difference between us and If by Phone? They're a really good call tracking provider. They're a competitor of ours. Our differentiator, ultimately, other than a few features here and there, is our conversation analytics platform, which actually analyzes the call and pulls out things like lead score, conversion rate data, sales skills data, that sort of thing. No one else does that. It's the biggest differentiator between us and any other call tracking provider. Okay, let's see. When implementing bidding strategies for the first time, should we implement rules that are close to the ROAS that the keywords are performing right now, or can we just set what we want our return on ad spend to be? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Google is going to recommend the starting ROAS or CPA, depending on which rule you're going for. And so sometimes that number is going to look a little bit off, but basically that's the number that would retain somewhat similar results to what you have. So stay close to that number. If you go too far away from it, the results could really drop, so you could see far fewer conversions. And at the end of the day, keep in mind, so there's only so much you can do with bid management. If your business is just not good at converting someone who comes to your website to a customer, like bids are not going to fix that, right? You have to fix your landing page, and that's the stuff that Tim Ash was talking about on his webinar, and that's what we all have to keep in mind. If your competitor is twice as good at taking someone who comes to their site and turning them into a customer, they can automatically afford to pay twice as much for a click, and there may be no way for you to compete with that. So, stay close to what Google is suggesting, kind of tweak it to where you want it to be, but keep in mind it's not just bids that are going to get you there, it's also the landing page and conversion optimization.
Great advice. Gary asks a really interesting question. He says, can you use, I'll just read it, Fred, can you use bid automation rules in conjunction with bid adjustment percentage, location, devices, day part? I was told if you want to use bid adjustment rules, you can't utilize bid automation rules.
Yeah, that's correct. So the stuff like conversion optimizer or target CPA, target ROAS bidding, they automatically already handle like the mobile bid adjustments, the geographic bid adjustments, the day parting bid adjustments. So all of those become moots at that point for you, and you don't have to worry about it. But the nice thing is Google is in real time figuring out what those bid modifiers should be. but rather than taking kind of a generic approach to it, they're taking a very specific approach. And kind of to illustrate this point is, say you have a campaign and you know it performs really well in California and really badly in New York. Well, you have to set a campaign-level geographic bid modifier for those two regions. But guess what? There's probably a handful of keywords that do really well in California that maybe don't do so well in New York, right? So there's kind of like this subset of stuff that isn't really working with that bid modifier that you've just set and really should have had a different bid modifier. So what's the answer for us? Well, we can either create an infinite number of campaigns, which just becomes a huge management nightmare, or we can say, Google, do your magic in real time. As that search happens, figure out where is it coming from, but also factor in everything else about it and set a bid in real time. So you're correct. You can't use both at the same time, but I don't see that as a negative. I actually see that as one less thing I have to worry about.
Awesome. Erica asks, what are your thoughts on using automated rules for setting bids based on match type?
Yeah, so I think what Erica is referring to perhaps is the fact that many advertisers like to say that the exact match should always have a higher bid than the phrase match, and that should have a higher bid than the broad match. And that's a reasonable approach. So automated rules, I've not specifically used those to achieve this type of bid management. I have written some scripts that validate this, so they look at a whole account and they see what is the exact match bid, and then they can automatically set the broad and the phrase to a percentage of what the exact was. So it maintains that structure of one bid, one match type should always have a higher bid than the next match type. And that's fine. I mean, I think ultimately, again, if you just let Google use the target CPA or the target ROAS, or you're even giving that control to a third-party company, you know, it's not always the case that the exact match should have a higher bid than the phrase, right? Maybe you've picked a really lousy exact match keyword, and for some reason the phrase match does better because there's these hidden gems within the phrase or the broad match. And so what I would say to do that is make sure you're looking at the search terms report, the keyword report, and make sure you're looking at what users actually type in. And you take these queries, so whatever the user typed in, which is different sometimes than what your keyword is, and if that's converting or that's performing really well, add it to your account as a keyword, because now you can set a specific bid for that query, right? Whereas in the past it was kind of part of the aggregate of that phrase match, that broad match, and so you didn't have quite as much control over it. But yeah, I mean, it can work as a bid strategy.
Okay. Any specific strategies you have to try to get your ad on the top position for mobile devices, or are the rules pretty much the same? You just need to treat the mobile devices differently, or what's your strategy there, if any?
Yeah, so we have one local customer who knows he performs much better on mobile devices. So his directive is to have a high mobile bid modifier, and making sure that the average position that we achieve is better than 2. So it's either a position 1 or a 2, because on mobile you tend to have fewer ads on the page, so you have to shoot for a higher position just for starters. But yeah, we just use the mobile bid modifiers either at the campaign or the ad group level to achieve that. You know, obviously it's not completely ideal to not have a little bit more control, but that's kind of what we're limited to by Google.
Okay, great. Let me read you one more question, and then we'll be done. So this is kind of what you touched on a moment ago, but we've got somebody who asks a really thoughtful question. He says, I want to hear some ideas and experiences about implementing flexible bid strategies at an AdWord or at an ad group level. As per my requirement, I need to have different bid strategies to my ad groups for more control on ad costs and returns. For example, I have a campaign targeted to Texas. I have a group in this campaign that contains certain keywords. These keywords work well in Austin, but not so well in Dallas. So I need to set this ad group bid. I need a 20%. Let's see. I need to set this ad group bid like 20% increase in Austin and 20% decrease in Dallas. Is this possible with a flexible bid strategy feature? If yes, what option should I opt to do in this scenario? So I understand fully that question. Do you understand what he's asking there, Brett?
I kind of understand. So, I mean, and again, I think that kind of goes back to the previous answer I gave. So different keywords and different searches perform differently in different cities.
Right.
And the right strategy is to take advantage of this. So if something does really well in Austin, you should be on top of that. You should be maximizing the impressions and the clicks and the conversions you get from Austin. And where that gets complicated is, and I may be wrong on this, but I believe the geographic bid modifier for Google only lives at the campaign level. You can't set that down to the ad group level. At the ad group level, you can set the mobile bid modifier, but not the geographic one. It's possible they've added that since I last checked, but that's what makes it hard, right? Because now you have to have, if you know that it's just that one ad group does really well in Austin, you have to split out that ad group into its own campaign. And that was my whole point about now you could be running an infinite number of campaigns almost, because each keyword has a different performance in each region. And a region is not just Texas, it's not just Austin, it could actually be a specific zip code in Austin, it could be a specific section of Austin. Austin's a big city, right? So, I mean, you can imagine how this could quickly get out of hand with thousands of campaigns just to be able to give you the best bids at each level. But that's if you want to do it yourself. If you let Google handle it with target CPA or target ROAS, then you don't have to worry about it.
Makes sense. I lied and told you that was our last question. I have one more, and it's more of a strategy type question. So do you believe, or does, based on your inside knowledge, do you believe that ad position has an impact on the number of conversions, number one? And then number two is, what are your thoughts on some of the conspiracies related to AdWords? Peter asked this question. He says, there's often an argument made that Google Conversion Optimizer doesn't have your objectives in mind. Since their business is based on clicks and not conversions, these conspiracy thoughts are enhanced by their hiding of some bid data. What's your take on that? So ad positioning conversions, Peter, and then the many conspiracies.
So yes, definitely the lower the position, the fewer conversions you will get. And that's just because people click less on ads in low positions. The conversion rate, on the other hand, Hal Varian, Google's chief economist, did a study on this, and he found that in aggregate, on average, tends to be the same across all positions. So it doesn't make a difference if your ad is in position 1 or if the last ad on the page, your conversion rate is going to be the same. But what differs is how many clicks you get in each of these positions. So based on that, yes, you will get fewer conversions in a lower position. But the question is it worth it paying extra for that high position? Because that might be unprofitable. So a strategy of just being as high as possible on the page is the wrong one. You have to be as high as possible while still being profitable on the clicks that you get. So you have to look at incremental cost per click, incremental cost per acquisition. And the math in that gets pretty difficult. And again, that's why a bid management system is often a nice thing to do, because the number, like incremental costs, that's a calculation you have to do. That's not just a metric that exists in AdWords. And that's basically what you should be basing decisions on. As far as conspiracy theory, I'm a former Googler. I believe Google is trying to do right, and I still believe that. I still work with them. And you're right. I mean, right, Google gets paid on a click basis, but at the same time, they have an ecosystem where the reason people advertise with them is because it works, because they get profits from it. If they were to do something where they're artificially pricing stuff higher and higher and higher to the point where it's no longer working for advertisers, that's going to kill the ecosystem, right? The fewer advertisers they have, the fewer people will want to be search partners, Google Display Network partners, right? So that kills that part of the ecosystem. So I think there's a fine balance that they have to maintain as a company. And at the end of the day, the whole system is auction-based. So you can take control over that CPC, you set your maximum, and then Google just charges you whatever is necessary to beat the next person in the auction, and they automatically discount that down to the lowest level that you can do to still maintain that position. So yeah, I mean, as far as the conspiracy theory, no, I don't believe in that, but what I do believe in and what I have seen is that sometimes these bid management rules don't work great, right? Google looks at averages, but your business is not an average. Your business is unique, is one of a kind. And so you do want to look at those numbers very closely, and you want to be on top of them. And one thing that can go wrong, and this is actually really timely right now, but Black Friday is coming up. Things are different on Black Friday than they are on most days of the year. Google is not necessarily going to be the best at figuring that out. So if you've got everything automated, Google is going to look at historical data. How many days back? I don't know. They don't say. But they may not be looking back at what happened last Black Friday. They might be looking at what happened a month ago. And based on that, they may be underbidding on a big day like Black Friday. And if you just let Google handle it, you may actually not have many sales on Black Friday because people who are manually at least overseeing the bid automation would notice, oh, Google's not bidding high enough on this day, impression share is really dropping, right? Let me manually override and set a bid for just today, and then on more usual days, Google can have the control again. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying all of these automated systems work great. They have to be monitored, and that was my whole point. A human needs to look at this to make sure it's doing what you expect it to do.
Great. Fred, thanks for the time. We really, really appreciate it. You've been great, and the information as well as the answers to the questions was wonderful. So thanks for taking the time. Everybody, thank you for taking the time out of your day to attend. We know you're busy, so thanks for doing that. You're going to get an email from us tomorrow morning that has the recording. I would encourage you to take Fred up on his offer to get a discount of the Optimizer platform. Email him and get that discount, because that's awesome. And then I would also encourage you to take Log My Calls on a 30-day test drive. You can go onto our site, logmycalls.com, click on the pricing button, and you can see the trials we have available. Because if you're getting any volume of phone calls at all, you need to ensure that you're tracking them. And if you're an agency and your clients are, you need to ensure that you're getting credit for those calls. So everybody, thank you for your time. Fred, any final thoughts before we close?
No, you know, good luck everyone in the holiday season. I know a lot of this work is really hard, so hopefully some of these automations will really save you some time, and appreciate everybody's time this morning, and for Sydney, I guess this evening, coming out and listening to me. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. Everybody have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.